Hi there and welcome to another episode of the 33 Fuel vlog. My name is Warren, I'm one of the co-founders here at 33 Fuel, and today's show is all about Ironman triathlon racing. And we're going to keep it personal. We're keeping this with the team. Myself, Erica, who co-founded the company with me and is also my wife, so very much in the family there. And also James, our head of digital content. He's a sharp end age group Ironman athlete. We had, between the three of us, 3 very busy racing seasons last year alongside a busy working year. And we're going to share the experiences that we had with our different goals. In the case of Erica and I, it was how can we fit in an enjoyable, competitive half Ironman distance race that will really stretch us and push us while managing a very intense working schedule. How can we tread that fine line and execute that? And in James's case, it's about how could he really take his racing to the limit and aim for podiums in his age group and beyond. So different goals, different races. James is racing full course Ironman. Erica and I are racing the half distance. But just so much, as we talked about this when we caught up about it during our own racing season while we were geeking out about it, we realised there was an awful lot we'd all learned that could help anybody who was either at the sharp end, looking to push themselves forward, or maybe just trying to find a way to hit a strong racing goal while also balancing the multiple pressures of work, family, and everything else that if you're an amateur athlete, you've got to do. So this conversation is about sharing those tips and tricks, our lessons that we've learned, because our mission here at 33 Fuel is about giving athletes the tools to take their performance and their health, their well-being to the next level. And we do that by sharing great content like this on our blogs, our podcast, our social media. And we also do it in store every day, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, making the best high-performance natural sports nutrition for your racing and training. So you'll find that at 33fuel.com. If you're feeling hungry, do go and get yourself stocked up, but not before you've enjoyed this episode with myself, Erica, and James, dealing with 3 very different Ironman training and racing seasons.
All right, guys, so we've got the 3 of us here ready to get stuck into the delights, the highs, the lows, and the lessons taken from 2019 as a year in Ironman triathlon for all 3 of us. 1 year, several races, 3 very different experiences, and I think quite a lot to chew over here. So, Erica, James, where do you think we should dive in? Where would you like to start on this one?
Well, should we go chronologically just to keep it nice and tidy? Because I think we all had a few races, and I think they sort of wove in quite nicely. So we could just start at the beginning.
I think we could. I mean, if we're going to start at the beginning, I'm going to take a very educated guess here and say that your season of racing would have started before ours. Because I guess one thing here is that one season, different races, different goals. So, your goal was very much to compete at the absolute, the best you could possibly be, which was going to be looking for some very fast race times. In my case, I was looking to get back into racing after a couple of years where the business had just taken too much time out for me to be able to race anymore. I wanted to get back in and sort of get to the maximum I could within the constraints of having a lot of work on and not having a lot of time to train. And for Erica, it was all about getting on to go longer than you'd ever gone before.
Yeah, exactly. Do that.
So with all of that, I think your races would have come first. What was the first one of 20? Or run us through your race calendar for 2019 as you had it set up this time last year.
So as you said, I wanted to focus my year on long distance racing. And I had 3 key races in the year. The first one was in Pontevedra in Spain. That was the ITU Long Course World Championship. So that was distance-wise, it was about they always have slightly odd distances based on the venues, but it was essentially a 3/4 of an Ironman. So it was a 3K swim, about 120K bike, and then a 30K run. So that was race number 1 in May. And then I was moving on to the Outlaw Full Triathlon, which is a home race based in Nottingham, one of the biggest iron distance races in the UK, it's flat, it's fast, it's always got a good competitive feel, but it's a great PB one. So I'd planned to go there and nail a fast time ahead of race number 3, which certainly wasn't going to be fast, but which was my sort of the race I was most looking forward to was Ironman Wales in September. Again, massive field. But it was the atmosphere that I really wanted to soak up in Wales. You know, it was the 9th year of the race, and watched a ton of videos of it, and it's like nothing else. The support is insane. So yeah, that was sort of the plan for my season: 2 full distance Ironmans and 1 sort of 3/4 race.
And so just remind me, for the Ironman Wales, was part of the goal there to see if you could get a Kona slot, or was it simply go, you know, at your limit, and that would have been an added bonus if you could have reached that point?
It wasn't actually. I mean, I've qualified for Kona. I qualified in 2018 at Ironman Frankfurt. Decided not to take it. My view on Kona, and it was the same in Wales. I wouldn't have taken it even if I got it this year. My view on Kona is that I'd love to go, but for me, it's a box to tick once, and not a race that I think I'd go back to on multiple occasions. It's hugely expensive, and also I'm not sure. I don't think the conditions are perfectly suited to me. You know, it's the heat. I'm not sure that I'll ever perform really optimally in heat, but to be honest, it's more the financial side of things. It's so expensive getting over there that yes, undoubtedly I do want to go, but I want to go when I'm, you know, can be competitive, you know, and I've got sort of ideas of where I'd love to finish in my age group sometime in Kona. And I like doing new races. So, I mean, I wouldn't want to go back to Kona year after year. I think there's a ton of other places to explore and great race atmospheres, and you can still get an immense depth of competition at other races. So going into Wales, it wasn't a goal to qualify. I mean, it's if you can qualify, it shows you're at a good standard. And you know, I wanted to place, you know, I wanted to get on the podium in my age group, and that probably would have got a Kona slot. So they sort of go hand in hand. But no, I wouldn't have taken my slots last year. No.
Okay, so you've got this time last year you had a full season planned out, building yourself to 2 major goal races. Well, let's face it, the ITU World Champs as well. You had some serious racing on the calendar, but spread out with the time for preparation and recovery and everything else in between. Whereas from Erica and I's side, we had a slightly different calendar because we only had 1 race in. We were conscious that there was so much to do with work, and this is sort of part of the reason that sort of sparked the idea we should have a chat about this, because I think there's a lot of value to be dragged out from all sides. We could only do the 1 race. There wasn't going to be time for practice races or training races or to build up distance through races. That's how I've always done it with ultramarathons in the past, is, you know, starting with 30s and 50s in between sort of February and April and building up to 80s and 100s over the summer. But I didn't have the luxury of time or even the resilience in the body to do that. But from your point of view, Erica, when I had a brainwave that suddenly decided I wanted to do another Ironman race, and you had to think about it for a while and independently came to your own conclusion. What was it that made you decide that you wanted to step up and do a longer distance triathlon?
I have to say, for me, was the inspiration to embrace a bigger challenge, because the challenge of a race, a challenge of a triathlon is something that I did it already in the past, so it was not actually big enough. It was mainly just think about, okay, that would be really difficult. And then the fact that they said, we don't have time to do other races. So the only thing it could be just a focus on 1. And I think it was the best decision, because even if I had time to do extra races, I think at one probably could be more a distraction, weirdly, than a focus. I don't know if you guys think that if you break down your routine of exercise and then a race toward the race of the year, or toward the challenge, the bigger challenge that you want to do. If that, for your point of view, is more like something you have to do it because that is the more cliche way how to do it, to build up, or just go for it.
Well,
like,
I think it's good to have an A race. You know, I think everyone will put in an A race goal in the season, but traditionally you'd maybe have some B and C races in there to sort of, you know, test your legs out, get ready, work through transition, whatever it may be. Just put yourself under race conditions in the build-up. We only had an A race. I mean, in terms of your season, James, were you looking at them, A, B and C, or was it an A and a pair of Bs, or two A's and a B? I don't know. It sounds like we're doing A-level results here. What's going on?
Yeah. No, I think that's really tough. I think that's really tough how you guys did it. I mean, I know how busy you are, and I know that sort of it was really a logistical thing for you guys that you could only fit in time for one. But I used to be sort of a similar mindset that I really enjoy training. So I'd only, aim for one or two races in the season. I didn't need what I saw it as a distraction of other races. You know, I didn't want to have to do a bit of a taper, because I mean, even if you're doing sort of in the build up to an Ironman, say, if you're doing an Olympic distance, you'll want sort of 3 or 4 days easy before, and you're bound to need 3 or 4 days after. That's a week of missed training with only one hard session essentially in there. But of course, having sort of B and C races, it does give you the opportunity to practice your transitions, your fueling, your pacing, and all those kind of things. But actually, I think more importantly is that actually it takes a lot of pressure off the races that you are doing. I would sort of 3 years ago, I would go into races with, two half Ironman in the whole year, and I'd feel under so much pressure for it, because you've only got 2 opportunities to perform and to try and hit your potential, out of 365 days. And I found that quite stressful. So I've gradually over the years, I've tended to enter more and more races, and this year I've got more than ever. I might have gone overboard, but I think it does take the pressure off. It gives you the opportunity to screw up, basically. It gives you opportunity to make mistakes, and it's not the end of the world. Yes, you've got sort of race entries and things, but you have another opportunity to prove yourself and to reach whatever potential you're aiming for, as well as all the benefits of practicing nutrition and pacing and what it's like when you're really hurting and don't want to go.
Well, I think also having that, just there is a difference in the race experience versus the training experience, and the atmosphere is different. I remember when I was doing a lot more races that it was very easy to turn up on the start line of a race relatively, because it was there were some A races in there, but mainly the time it was another race. It was an enjoyable event out. You were totally into the mindset of the different environment, and it didn't have any effect on the nerves one way or another. It was just another day. Whereas if you haven't done one for a while, it can be suddenly it appears, and there's quite a lot to think about.
Especially transition, actually, because transition, realistically, more you practice, better it is. And despite the fact that now, I don't know your experience with Ironman and things, about my experience was amazing. When we did transition, there were people that said, "Who want to be stripped? Yes, me, please. Just take off this wetsuit." And it was really easy in a way. And actually, it never happened to my races before. It's something I was like, "Oh, wow, that's amazing."
Either it's a newish thing, or it's something that, I don't know, it's North America only or whatever, but I had not seen strippers getting you out of your wetsuit. And don't anyone misunderstand that, but they do call them strippers, don't they? People helping you get your wetsuit off in transition. That was a real high for me. And the guy just in front of me only had a low next when he got into the transition tent, because his next words were, "Has anyone got any spare bike shoes?" Something had gone wrong in transition for him there. But random mistakes will happen. But no, you're right. That did make it a bit easier. But getting used to all of that. So if we go to, you're looking out ahead on your season this time last year, James. The aim is to really take yourself to your limit, and that's really, you're looking to podium in your age group. That's not just your limit. This is a serious level you're looking to achieve. How did you go about mapping out the training for that?
Well, this time last year, I had a bike coach. So when I started training for Ironman, I really looked at my strengths and weaknesses, and like you, I come from an ultra running background. So I've got a lot of experience in running. I've got a lot of durability and endurance in my legs for running. I don't feel that I didn't need the coaching from that side of things. And I'm part of a local triathlon club who I swim with. So I sort of figured having a bike coach would be the a nice mix of having a bit of guidance and a bit of structure, because the bike's obviously so crucial in Ironman, and not something I'd had experience of coaching myself in before, but also it left me with a bit of autonomy to decide how and when to get my swims and runs in around that. So I've forgotten what your question was now. When I was planning my
How
season.
did you
Oh
map
yeah,
out the training? How did you set
yeah.
out? Right, I know what the end goal is. I'm
Mm.
8, 9 months out, or whenever you start, 10 months. How am I going to get there, training
Yeah,
wise?
it's all about having the sort of mini cycles and having the goals en route. So I had three key dates. I had Ironman, I had the ITU Worlds, I had Outlaw Triathlon, and Ironman Wales. I love a spreadsheet, so I've got a big Excel spreadsheet with a whole year, and I work out how many weeks there are on the block in each block building to those. So before Pontevedra, I'd say have a 12-week block, and I know that I work well in a 4-week cycle, so I'll do 3 weeks of training and then 1 week recovery, 3 weeks training, 1 week recovery, 3 weeks training, 1 week recovery. So once I've got that big picture of those 12 weeks, I'll then drill down into what I want to focus on in each of those phases. Now, I can't particularly remember what I was focusing on in the lead up to Pontevedra, for example, but actually I do. It was a very hilly bike, for example. My biking training would reflect what the course is going to be. So I always break my training into building a solid base and getting a solid foundation in the first block. But then it's all about keeping high intensity in there, but getting more specific towards an event. I think a lot of people like the traditional model of periodization, which is create a massive base. You have huge volume, low intensity stuff over the winter, and then gradually as you get nearer and nearer races, you do more sharpening up, you do more pieces, you do more tempo stuff, you sort of do the harder work but lower the volume. And I think that's fine as a general approach and works for a year or two, but you're not really, by the time you get to your race, you haven't really trained specific energy systems that race is going to demand. So had I done that in the lead up to an Ironman, I may well have have good speed in my legs and be in good shape, but I wouldn't have actually spent a lot of time in race specific sort of training those specific systems. So going back to Pontevedra, I'd have done the first block as sort of a bit of foundation building, but I'd quickly have introduced hill reps, mimicking the length of the hills that I knew I was going to have in Pontevedra. I kept my running all on the canal path because the run in Pontevedra was pretty flat. There's only one little climb. Swimming, I just sort of get done what I can and do a bit of a mix of everything. But I think that the overall picture for me is always get more specific towards your event. Keep it interesting, but get more specific. If you're going to race in zone 3 on the bike, gradually include more and more time in zone 3 in the aero bars on a similar kind of terrain, rather than just taking the generalized approach of ton of volume, low intensity, and then get reduce the volume and get higher intensity.
No, that's interesting, and it's a good insight into how you can really start to layer more performance and bang for buck into your training. It's all focused, but when you are looking at, I mean, what sort of a training? How many sort of training hours were you doing in an average week, if there was such a thing? I mean, with the spreadsheets and everything, and your organisation and knowing you, I'm sure you were pretty regular and disciplined in about it. But what were the weekly hours looking like on average?
It was about 15, I'd say. And I tend to split that. That would have been pretty much week in, week out, would have been about 50% on the bike. So probably 7 to 8 hours of biking, 4 hours of running, and then probably 3 of swimming. And then getting some strength and conditioning in, around that. I didn't prioritize S&C as much as I should have done last year. That's certainly this winter that's just passed. I've really put an emphasis on strength and conditioning a much greater emphasis on that than I did last year. But yeah, it tended to be about 15 hours a week, really.
Okay, so that's a sizable chunk of training. It's not unique, certainly. I mean, but that's a very committed level of training, but with a high volume of specificity and accuracy in there. So very interesting to see that. I mean, from Erica and I's side, we had to look at the year and go, well, this is what we want to do, and we want to commit to this. And I mean, certainly I had originally looked at the full distance race. That's what I entered. It was Ironman Whistler, because we were going to be working in Canada in the summer, so that came together nicely. And we'll come to why that also helped a bit later on. But we had to look at the work clock and everything else. And 15 hours, no. I've tried doing 22 hours a week, or I did 1 week of Chrissy Wellington's Ironman training regime. For a bit of fun, in inverted commas. I think there's a blog post on that, even a podcast on that out somewhere in the archives. We'll link to that in the bottom of this one. That's a deeply unpleasant way to spend your life, particularly if you have a job as well. But if you're a pro, that's what it's going to take, and you're going to need all the sleep in between. But Eric and I figured it was going to be more like 10 hours was probably a maximum realistic commitment. And I'm going to say...
Which is still a good chunk of time.
It was a good chunk of time. Good chunk of time, and the reality was it probably came out, I think, more like 8 on a weekly average over the course of it. So to ask you, Erica, as the race was in, just to finish up, I'd originally entered the full distance Ironman. By March, I got off a long bike and thought I could run a marathon now, but it's going to be deeply unpleasant. Whereas I'm all up for some unpleasantness, and I wanted, you need a bit of pain if you're going to do these things properly, and I expected it. But an Ironman finish was just going to be a deeply unpleasant 4-hour grind at the end of the event, and that I was not up for. So I very happily, and I'm so glad I did, went for the 70.3, which allowed me, my goal had to shift, because as I realised, the training volume couldn't go up. I didn't want the injury risk, and I didn't want 4 hours of misery on the actual day. Like an hour or two would be fine, you expect something, but 4 was going to be too much. So I went to the...
Were you disappointed? Was that a hard decision to make? Was that hard, switching down to, from the Ironman to 70.3? Did that feel like
you're missing something?
It's hard on the male ego, definitely.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. Yeah, it took me a couple of weeks to rationalise it in my own mind, and probably another 2 weeks before I could actually tell anyone I'd done it. It was joyous on race day, though. Because when I saw, the course was in loops, and when you come to, the end of the first bike lap and it says Ironman continue 70.3 transition, you just little fist pump you away. It was exactly what I needed. But because something had to give, and it was the ultimate distance that had to give. I wanted to have an enjoyable, challenging, and for me, fast experience that was hard, not a brutal full-day slogfest, which is what the Ironman was going to turn into. If I could have done the Ironman at the pace I wanted, the way I wanted to execute 70.3, I would have done it. But the training space was not there, and there was no way I could have done that. So the goal had to become malleable.
Yeah, I think that is also a little bit of experience in a way, because when you do a lot of ultra, or in any case a longer distance, you can understand your capacity way more, and you know exactly how much you have to do. So I think you took that decision because you knew otherwise how horrible was going to be that race.
Yeah, it
because
wasn't...
otherwise, maybe if you didn't have all that experience on the back of your, this is what I'm doing, I paid for it, and I keep going, and I do it, Instead, I think probably there was also that process.
Well, talking of paying for it, it's a painfully expensive process if you want to enter a full Ironman and go to the 70.3, because you'll end up paying Ironman price for 70.3 and an admin fee to go with it. That was all my own fault. My ego and my wallet took the hit. But so for you, Erica, looking at the season ahead, you were going to be going into training for the longest triathlon you'd ever done. I think we entered sort of back end of 2018, so January 2019, you were looking into that. How did you feel about the season ahead? How did you feel about your plans?
How can I say amazing? In the way that I just say, I'm going to do my biggest race. I have only 7 months, probably a little bit less, let's say 6, to train. I don't have a coach. Here in London, the weather is not very good, and the swimming is not so easy as maybe in other countries. So I have very limited time because, of course, having a company, you just basically put the majority of time on business. Biking, is everything very flat around here. And I basically end up to do really guinea pigs round of Regent's Park for hours.
You went up to like 80k round Regent's Park at one point, didn't you?
Oh my god!
How far up? 1 lap.
We're up is 4.5. No, 4.5.
Is that all it is?
Yeah, it's mental. It's mental. And I do remember that day I said, okay, I need to do 80k. Let's do it. I got so bored. My eyes, they were shutting down. I really was starting to sleep. Despite the legs, they were going as fast as they could. But the mental side, it was completely like the brain is gone. It was so weird. Really strange sensation. So it was actually challenging. Also challenging to say to all my friends, stuff, I'm doing this, because I felt that actually I had such a small amount of time. So it was actually a little bit of a challenge. But then when I embrace it, you embrace it. And the fact that we work with our company, we can actually work not only in London, but we can move. We decided last 2 months to move to Canada, and that actually where I really changed it did change my fitness, because I could actually swim really in the proper sea. I could bike properly, longer distance without feeling like dizzy because of the same loop. So in reality, also running is beautiful because you have the seawall there. We were in Vancouver, so you have plenty of places where to go. Finish the day, you can actually train. In London is really a challenge. But I was very lucky, and not saying because Warren is my husband, but because I didn't have time to find a coach, nothing, because also we were traveling, so we didn't have really. So, and Warren, he coached me.
You could sort of say that. Erica's approach was, now you've got all this experience, so you can be my coach. Whatever I need to do, just tell me and I'll do it. So I would say, right, okay, today is this. And Erica would go, I don't feel like doing that. Or I'd say, you really need a rest day today because yesterday was a hard one. No, I'm going to go and do something else. So I sort of was the coach, but only when she wanted to listen to me. It's pretty selective student.
I'm really bad. Also because realistically he was really good with the plan and stuff in his mind. So I didn't know exactly the plan in his mind because I never really worked with a coach. And actually I'm very interested to know also your side. But anyway, in my world, I was feeling stronger. So I said, no, I never did this long distance. I really wanted to achieve this in this week. And Warren instead was just push me back because he knows that you can get injured and all the difficulties that then it can actually stop your race. So that was a big challenge because in my mind I felt, no, I need to do more. He's not giving me enough. He doesn't realize he's only 6 months away from the and actually sometimes closer and closer. It was like 2 months away, and I'm still not prepared. I never did all the distance, all the difficult. You freak out. So
well, it's a bit like the we have a post on this, I think, James, don't we, on the blog about paranoia, the irrational fear that you're not ready.
Yeah, exactly. And 6 months. I appreciate that as your first half Ironman, that feels like quite a short length of time. But that's a really long. That's plenty of time to get yourself in shape, physically and mentally ready for it. But Totally. I mean, the number of people that, I've sort of done a bit of coaching that you come across who've done absolutely great work, and they get to the last week, 2 weeks before, and it just it all falls apart.
I need to run a marathon the week before the marathon, or whatever it may be. So, as Eric said, one of the things that was useful, and we, as you know very well, James, we don't have a fixed office at 33 Fuel. We all work where we need to work. We catch up when we need to catch up. We all do our thing. And that involves sometimes we're in different countries. And it was an advantage for us to be able to. It was a time when we didn't have to be based in London for meetings or anything else, so work could be mobile. We went to Vancouver for the last 2 months to finish up the training. And we started it actually in Italy because we were all down in Sicily together. You came down to Sicily with us, and you were legging it out the door at 7 a.m. every morning to get you running, while we were getting our turbo in the afternoon.
So I didn't get the invite to Vancouver.
Let me have a word with the HR department about that.
We have to speak about what's going on. James is supposed to be with us and race with us in. Yeah, exactly.
I think we must have been looking at your race calendar. There must have been a clash in there somewhere.
No, in fact, there was. Due to be, if you remember, we were due to be racing on the exact same day, actually. Me over in the UK and you guys over there.
Yes.
That's it, you see. Yeah. So next time, we'll all go to Vancouver. But with all the stuff in elite sport going on, we're certainly UK-based for the foreseeable. But it was useful to be able to look at that year, I think both for Eric and I, and go, okay, well, the race is in Whistler. We can be in Vancouver for the 2 months leading up to the race. And we spent a lot of time in Vancouver anyway. It's such a brilliant live-work city. And it's an amazing place for training. The cycling, the open water swimming, the swimming pools, the facilities, the running. I mean, we really lucked out. The apartment we had a gym with a treadmill. And like in these duplex apartments places, no one uses the gym, but it was really good kit. So you could literally do a bike out of the front door and be back in on the treadmill within about 2 minutes of coming through the front door. So the bike run was too easy. The sea swim, they do it twice a week off one of the beaches in Vancouver. It's a 1.5 kilometre loop with lifeguards. So to be able to put that in once or twice a week was really valuable for us because, I mean, certainly from my point, running was not the thing I needed to work on if I was time poor. What I needed to work on was swimming because I have no technique or real ability there. And I needed to work on the bike because that's the longest part of the race and where I could make the largest gain. The run was really not quite an afterthought, but I think if I did 4,000 kilometres on the bike in training, I did 400 kilometres on my feet running. So very, very little on that side in order to focus it. So there we were. We were all building up towards our races. As you were getting closer to yours, James, where were the developments along the way? Because the Pontevedra race, the ITU race, that went swimmingly, right?
Yeah, it did go pretty well. I certainly had a very good winter's build, and I actually, like you, come from sort of an ultra running background, so I've never really worked or worried about my run form or run fitness when it comes to triathlon. I've always focused more on the cycling and just sort of done what I can to get through on the swim. But the first couple of years of doing Ironman distance, it was my run that I got quite strong on the bike quite quickly, and my run, I think, let me down a little bit. I had the endurance, but I didn't quite have the speed to sort of be knocking out sort of a low 3-hour marathons. So this time last year in the lead up to Pontevedra, I was really focusing on running more than the other two, particularly because the distance was a bit odd. The swim was proportionally a very, was a little amount of time, and I was quite happy with my bike fitness. So I worked hard on my run, and then come Pontevedra, the beautiful town, beautiful city. But it was freezing in the water, so they actually cut the swim in half. So rather than it being a 3K swim, it was only a 1.5K swim, which suited me down to the ground. So I mean, it was an even smaller chunk of the race. And the swim was fine. Just sort of, I always tend to just get through the swim. Really enjoyed the bike, but I think because I put a lot more emphasis on the running, it had just taken away a bit of the power in my legs. because it was a very hilly course where sort of power was it was pretty important. You know, sort of flat races, you can, you know, sort of depending on the type of course, sort of depends on where you want the strengths or weaknesses to lie. But I didn't probably quite do enough work on the bike, but on the run, yeah, I felt absolutely great. It was the best run I've had in, you know, in a long course race, and I think it was about 32k in the end, and I was sort of 7 minute miling or 7:05 minute miling, and just sort of felt great during it, you know. And as the first race of the season, I could see that, you know, yeah, I could have held that for another 10k, you know. So I mean, being able to do sort of 7 to 7:05 minute miling over a marathon, it was sort of was my aim for last year, really. So yeah, I felt like I was in a good place. Yeah, and it went well. I ended up coming. I'd wanted to come in the top 10 in my age group, and came ninth. So just about made it. I would like to have been a bit higher. I know that sort of if I'd ridden to my potential, I could have, you know, I would have jumped up a few slots. But that's the way with triathlon. It's that you can always pull out bits that could have gone a little bit better, even if it's just, I could have put my shoes on a bit quicker. But overall, it was a really positive race. Yeah.
Amazing.
I mean, that puts you in again, you know, you've got the bank of training behind you, you've got the goal set ahead, you're looking for an age group podium, you're in the pocket, your kind of warm-up race for the season is showing that, yeah, this is all now stretching out the right way ahead of you. And I mean, in terms of for Eric and I going through that sort of similar phase, that was probably my period where I realised I needed to drop down a distance if I wanted to achieve my goal of being able to push through the race rather than survive the race and, you know, within my own parameters, race it. Eric was clearly, you were already in the spot where the 70.3 was your distance, but it was much, you know, it was longer than what you'd ever done before.
Yeah.
But I think, what do you think, Eric, were the biggest things that helped us get that training done and do the right sort of training to maximise the value we could get out of the time, because we really did have a limited amount of time to fit the training in. What were the biggest things that helped you with managing that?
Yeah, I think the fact that we have limited time, limited also location, because some places that you live, maybe just open the door and you are in the wild. So you can bike, you can do whatever.
Yeah, like Vancouver's perfect, central London, a little more challenging.
Yeah, less. I think what we did, that was my first experience in this way, because I never really had a coach. It was how we break down everything, the session, and we were pretty regimental with that. We never really said, I jumped this session. That whatever happens, rain, no rain, but whatever, the water is pretty. If you go into swimming pool where we went, it was like a broth. It was so like a soup. It was so hot.
Our nearest pool in Marylebone is highly functional, but it's everything you imagine a municipal pool in central London to be. And also it's short.
It's only 20 or 25 meters.
It's something weird like 28.
Is it 28? Whatever. But it's kind of short. But what actually, what makes us doing it, the regimental, and also the luck in a way that we created by ourselves, that we were able at one point to move and not to stay in the same, the same place where to train. In fact, we had beautiful in Canada. We had a 137 meters infinity pool outdoor where you can actually.
It's the longest. It's the longest outdoor pool in North America. It's in Kitsilano in Vancouver. Yeah, 136. Is it 136 or 137 meters? And they've literally got. I mean, there's a sort of kids area. There's like a fake sort of wave shallow pool area. But the main length of it is divided into two motorways, and even when it's busy, you do not notice it's busy. You know, you can draft on with someone for a bit, but it's wide enough that you can just go around them, or they can go around you.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
You're never like bumping into people. That was a luxury finish. But I think one of the big things that made the difference in the interim between sort of managing London and work and everything else for me was getting some focused turbo time in using Sufferfest, which was a revelation for me. I mean, I know there's plenty of people out there, there's all sorts of training platforms. Zwift is popular if you like racing, Sufferfest, I just found the level of engagement and entertainment alongside very focused work based on your own metrics. I was able to make, based on my metrics within their software, coming from our smart trainer, I made a 15% improvement in all my numbers across the board in like a 6 or 7 week period, just by doing 2 sessions a week on that. And they were painful sessions, but when it's 40 minutes to an hour, 50 minutes to an hour, you can do that. And they, like an outdoor ride at the weekend and 1 or 2 of those in the week, I think they paid huge dividends for me that I would not have got anywhere else. And I mean, you've been a long-term turbo user, but you do it even more focused. You don't even have the entertainment. You just get your head down and follow the numbers.
Oh, I'll have YouTube up or a movie or something. But I have to say, Sufferfest with the work that we're doing with them in the minute. I mean, it's an absolute. I mean, it looks incredible. I'm after my next race, I'm absolutely going to invest in some time in it. But yeah, I think the quality of turboing is huge. I think, I mean, we have the beauty of being able to ride and do our training, sort of not just restricted to early morning or late in the evening, but it's still, I mean, to get an hour session in, it takes me an hour and a half of my day, because I can close my laptop, run downstairs, get it done, and be back up here, rather than getting all the kit on, getting outside, traffic lights, cars, potholes. It's just, there's absolutely a place for riding outside, but for efficiency, and I mean, you can't beat it.
I think for engine gain, and again, I mean, it's a hard thing to explain, but to anyone who's done a lot of cycling or swimming or running, whichever sport you're most used to, or even if it's, gym work, wherever you're used to most often physically pushing, you'll find yourself able over time to gauge your level. You can go deeper, you can pull back a bit, you can ease off, you can tell where you are. I found with cycling and swimming for a long time, compared to the running, I didn't have any gears. I just had one speed. I could go and do it. Whereas the running, I could always step it up a bit, bring it down a bit, manage my effort. And doing the turbo time on the bike allowed me to really start going deep on the bike, which started to develop those sort of inbuilt gears in the body where you did have, 2 or 3 zones as opposed to just one. Did you?
Totally. Because I was starting before with Swift. I think the majority they go with Swift, and then I do remember we came across with Sufferfest, and Warren, he started maybe just a few weeks before I started, and I was like, I don't get it. I can just hear from the other room. I could hear just this super loud music. I love music, so loud music was great. But then it would start to be instead really kind of like lullabies, and then again, so I couldn't understand it. I could hear Warren just with his lungs expanding. You could hear the sound. It was like, oh my God, that must be so hard. And so at the end, I said, okay, I'll give it a go. As soon as I tried it, I couldn't. I found that is the best training session you can do. It doesn't have to be, as you said, James, has to be also outdoor, has its own space, but indoor, man, it's fantastic. And I think it's basically a coach. It's really a coach without no limit.
It feels like the kind of, that sort of technology and analysis, albeit, okay, it's been applied with a broader brush through the app, but you can focus it down. That was only available at the highest level, probably even only 5 years ago, that sort of level of analysis. And for anyone who thinks we're sort of banging on about the Sufferfest a lot, and it must just be because we're doing a partnership with them, it's the other way around. We started doing a partnership with them because we started using it and loved it so much.
Too good. But James, you were speaking about before that is that the first time you had a coach or like cycling coach?
Yeah, so when I started triathlon in 2014, I knew nothing about triathlon at all. So I had a coach a triathlon coach. So he remotely would send me swim, bike, run sessions, and I was with him for a couple of years. But sort of outgrew it a bit and didn't enjoy the pressure. Like, there's a lot of positives of having a coach, but I think the pressure and accountability actually became a bit too much for me. And I put too much pressure on myself to sort of meet things when, I wasn't up for it, or I needed some time off. And, even though you're obviously conversing and you're having, you build a relationship with this person, it's still it's not as good as seeing someone face to face. So I went from having a coach for the swimming, biking and running to just having a bike coach. And he was a brilliant coach, really, really well respected in sort of the cycling industry. And he certainly brought my cycling in a lot. And I liked having that bit of autonomy for myself to organize my swimming and running sessions, but having that guidance on the bike. Um, so yes, this time last year, I did still have him as a coach. Yeah.
And so, with the races coming closer, which way round? So it was Ironman Wales, ITU Pontevedra, then the Outlaw, then Ironman Wales. So Outlaw's coming up. You're feeling good. If I remember rightly, it didn't go entirely to plan.
No, it didn't. It's rather an odd one. So after Pontevedra, I was feeling great. I'd worked on my running, as I said. My running was in great shape. I just knew that if I could keep it ticking along, my goal was just to be able to run 10K more than that in what was sort of 2.5 months' time. So I had plenty of time to bring my swimming on, my running, my biking on, and I had a 9-week block, and I absolutely nailed the 9 weeks. Like it was sort of every single week I'd get to Sunday and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I put in a really good week here. When you don't want to do anything, you feel like you're teetering on the edge. I wasn't on the edge of fatigue, but I was like, geez, I absolutely nailed that. Let's do another one. And I did another one and another one. I had 9 weeks and I've never had consistency like it. So finished the main block of training and then I gave myself sort of a 10-day taper. And it got to the Tuesday before the race. So the race was on the Sunday, and on Tuesday, I noticed I had a little graze on my elbow, and I can't for the life of me think what it was from. It was such an innocuous little graze. It was from brushing the door of my car or something, but I mean, it didn't hurt or anything. But it was just like a little graze. And Tuesday night was the absolute worst night of my life. I was in an extraordinary amount of pain. So I went to bed and it was feeling a bit bruised. And come sort of 11 o'clock at night, I couldn't touch the thing. Like my elbow, it was so sore. I couldn't lie on my side. I couldn't lie on my back, my front, anything. It felt like it was throbbing. It was so painful. So I went downstairs and sat in a chair all night. Didn't close my eyes once. Literally just sat there, and I knew I needed to get to the clinic the next morning. And Kerry and I, my partner, went off to the clinic, and they said, we've obviously got an infected bursa, which is sort of the sac on the end of your elbow. I was like, well, I've never heard of an infected elbow before, but I was, didn't think much of it at this stage because it was only sort of 12 hours in, and it was Wednesday morning by this point, and I wasn't doing any training really. I was on a real wind down, so I was like, well, let's nail a couple of days of antibiotics. I know that's not ideal, but that should hopefully clear it up. And I got some antibiotics, and 24 hours later, it still was no better. And then another 24 hours later, this thing had grown like it was massive. I mean, it started off with like a little bubble, sort of the size of a golf ball. It was really protruded on the end of my elbow. But by 48 hours later, the swelling came all the way pretty much down to my elbow. So, it was like it came out here, went all the way down my elbow around here. And I mean,
so pretty much tricep to wrist is now you've got something that looks more like a leg than an arm.
Yeah, and it was bright red, and it was so I can't believe how painful it was. I mean,
at this point, you're literally maybe 24, 48 hours out from race day. This cut on your arm has now turned. It's got infected. You're not sleeping. Because you can't sleep in a bed. You're trying to sleep in a chair, so you're not getting any rest. You're not getting any sleep. As the race gets closer, the mental battle surely of I need to rest in order for this to recover, but my God, I can't rest because A, it's so painful, B, I'm trying to sleep in a chair, C, I'm so wound up because the race is coming on. Like, it's the worst. It's a first world problem, granted, but in terms of your race, this is the worst mental scenario to be in, where you're like, I must rest, I can't rest, I must rest, I can't rest. Will it be ready, won't it be ready? How did you manage your way through that, and what was the end result?
It's funny looking back on it now because I can you can look back on these things and have a chuckle about it and say, God, how ridiculous! You had an infected elbow. How stupid is that? But sort of absolutely at the time, I wasn't even so worried about not getting the rest because I was more focused on, is this thing gonna be all right to race with? Because obviously you got to lean on aero bars, and I mean I couldn't touch it at all. Couldn't put a jumper on without it being painful. So yeah, as we approached the race, I mean, it was really difficult. I mean, Kerry was amazing in that we decided that, right, well, we're going to carry on the path as if we're going to be able to race. So the race is on Sunday, and this is, say Thursday by now. We're gonna keep nailing the antibiotics and just do absolutely everything we can in our power to get to the race. So, I was taking I had some kombucha, I was having kefir, I was trying to really be great on my nutrition to sort of, help reduce the inflammation. And I mean, we even went up to Nottingham. So we were due to, I think we'd booked accommodation on the Friday and Saturday night, and I mean, it got to Friday and I had really lost hope that I was going to be able to do anything because it had been sort of 3 days by that point and it hadn't got any better. And every morning I'd sort of wake up, well, sort of having vaguely slept a couple of hours in the middle of the night, just praying that it would have gone down a bit, and it just didn't. So, but we decided to stay on this path. So, and I think mentally that was probably, I didn't cognizantly really think of, right, how am I going to deal with this? It just turned out that the best thing that I could have done in that moment was carry on and hope that I would still be able to go to the race and fulfill what I hoped was be my potential. I think if I'd stopped on, say, Thursday and said, well, it's not going to happen, let's forget about it, I think I would have gone into a real pit about it. But in hindsight now, I knew I did absolutely everything I could and I gave myself the best chance of racing. So anyway, we went up to Nottingham on Friday night, and then just tried to swim and go for a ride on Saturday, and it wasn't going to happen. Not, I mean, I think I managed 15 minutes in the saddle, and it was so painful. I mean, there just wasn't a chance I was going to be able to ride 5 hours, 4.5, 5 hours the next day. So pulled the plug on Saturday evening. Yeah.
So you pulled the plug, and you were still there the next day. So the race happened. Difficult one, I'm sure. I mean, but I remember we were talking about it at the time. It seems like with yourself and Kerry, you had a great team there. She was really good in sort of helping with that support, and because she's done a lot of races and events herself. You've just been crewing her on the Spine race recently. I mean, there's no shortage of understanding between you two of how these things work. And so it felt like, from the conversations we had, your ability to, okay, that's not what I wanted, but I can't change it, and to turn that focus towards Ironman Wales it looked pretty quick.
It was quite quick, and actually, I mean, I'm quite a passionate person, and I think without having that person who knows you very well, who can take a real objective view of it, I'd have lost it a bit more. I would have been really emotional about it. I would have stressed myself out a ton. I certainly wouldn't have done anything to, improve recovery or anything. So it was great having someone who knows me so well, obviously, and was able to manage that. But it was just sort of going back to Outlaw is interesting because we stayed on a Saturday night and we were like, well, we may as well stay up here and we'll go and support everyone on the race on Sunday. And we woke up on Sunday morning and I'd got a text message, and because they assumed I was still racing, a text message that said the bike leg has been cancelled. And this was, I don't know if you remember, but it was the end of July last year. Well, you wouldn't, because this was when you were in Canada, but the weather was absolutely appalling. And there had been a ton of trees falling down and the rain was, biblical. So they'd actually cancelled the bike leg anyway. So had I raced, it turned into a swim and a run. I still wouldn't have been able to do it. I still couldn't have swum or run a marathon, but it was kind of, I would have been really hacked off if I got there in great shape and not been able to do the full race anyway. So I mean, it's an interesting twist. But yeah, in answer to your question, I was pleased that I had Wales after Outlaw. I think, and this is what I said earlier about the benefit of having a few peaks and a few goals through the year. It just takes the pressure off that one race. I mean, yes, Outlaw was an A race, but I still had another one. So it wasn't the end of the world. I still had all the great shape that I was in. I had the form, and I knew that as soon as I could get this elbow recovered, that I would, I'd be on a great platform to nail another 5 weeks or so of training before Wales. Yeah.
So you make a good point there that having races to peak and trough through the year can help with mindset, with goals, and it also doesn't put all the pressure onto one race, which is almost a perfect segue to take me to Erica's first 70.3, because our schedule, as mentioned earlier, did not allow for any B races, any training races. And whereas, Erica, you've done plenty of triathlon before, it wasn't like the sport was new. But, the Ironman format is slightly different. You've just got a slightly different organisation to bed yourself into. You only had one chance to get this right. That was everything from your training, your taper, but then transitions, kit, nutrition, pacing, the whole lot. There were no races where you could go and test that. And even though we did build some things into training where we did a lot of exercises. For example, we went up to Whistler. It's only a 2-hour drive from Vancouver. We went up there like a week before to go and look at the course. We literally had walked most of the course. We got in the water at the swim, so we knew the temperature and what it looked like. We tested the exit from transition 1 on the bike to see, because it's an uphill exit. So should you clip in first or should you push the bike up? What's going to be quicker? How's it going to be with traffic? We'd analysed all those little bits. But for all of the homework, which was super helpful, you went into that race and it was the race. How did you manage that mentally?
That was actually very interesting because, that race could go very well, very long. The weather could be good, could be not good. So it could be also my fitness or actually the event, because maybe something happened and you can't control that. So there was one side that the things I can't control, I'm not taking in consideration, because otherwise you get too mentally unfocused.
You say that now.
I said no now, of course.
They were considered along the way.
They were considered, of course, but let's say no, they didn't. But I have to say, is one shot. You have one bullet, and it has to be the one that you really wanted to be proud of hitting the target. And that is mentally, you need. I personally was able to find in my mind a reason why I have to do it, despite whatever happens. So in my mind, I visualize this. I'm doing it. I'm doing it. It's happening. It's just like nothing is going to be wrong. It's going to be all as it did. Luckily, as it did. But there was the mental focus that it did help. And I actually, realistically, what it did help also was going to on the course. Check it out of the course before jumping in the water. It's a stupid thing. Jumping in the water. I mean, I did only maybe like 10 minutes inside the water.
It makes such a difference, doesn't it?
We looked at the swim entrance. We looked at the swim exit. We walked our way through each transition zone, even before they'd been put in place. We knew where they were going to be. And then when they were there on the day before, we went and walked through them again.
Yeah, I think exactly. I think also the day of the race, not the day before the race, that you bring your bike and organize all your stuff. That's where I really found it really important to go around and do the course. If I was arriving there fresh without, it's going to be all right, whatever, the bike, just not thinking about where I will be. I don't think so that race it could go in the same way. I think that kind of mentally rehearsal, I don't know if you guys always do it, but I think it was very important.
I think we did more of it. When you have several races, it's less, there's slightly less focus on each one. I mean, I don't know about you, James, but certainly there are some races where you roughly know what's happening, 80% of it doesn't matter, but when it's the one and you want to execute it and there are no others, I'd never paid that much attention to all of those details, but because there was a lot we couldn't do, paying attention to all of those details to the last degree, literally walking every bit of entrance and transition and visualising where's the bag drop, where's the bike, where do I put my shoes in, what order do I take things out of the bag, whatever it was, that we could control. We couldn't suddenly get another 10 hours training a weekend.
Yeah, also stupid thing, reference... what is my bike? Okay, reference. What is that tree or whatever?
What's the quickest route out of transition from where my bike is?
I mean, there are so many different things, but from my point of view, that it was actually essential. It was very good. But in reality, I just embraced the fact that this was the one. And it's not the first time I have to embrace this kind of challenges. There is just one bullet, one target. So in life in general. So I'm mentally, I just embrace it.
But it's not totally true. We didn't have a warm-up race because we did that hospital charity 5K with our 7-year-old nephew 2 weeks before. So that was a good. That was the warm up for the Ironman.
It was.
that was our B race.
Actually, that was the day with jet lag because we just landed in Vancouver and after a few hours we went.
But I have to say we executed a great race plan there, and our nephew we really helped him on his pacing, and he was able to smash some of his mates who'd gone out too hard too early.
And actually, another thing that did help me thinking about. It was really pacing because knowing that is only one race, if you don't go and you just go with your feeling, listen to your body, I didn't because otherwise I was not following the pacing that I supposed to do. Because I was just feeling strong, I can do it, feeling you. Listen to your body, it's typical, no? Listen to your body, tells you what you do. No. Because in something so long, don't listen to your body, stick on the plan.
What was the plan, Erica? What did you use? What was sort of the metric? Did you use heart rate or something? Like how did you pace yourself?
No, for me it was distance.
It was average speed and distance, but it was that. And again, I think we have an excellent blog post referring to this, which is based around marathons, but it'll go for any distance race. It's about how 99% of people at the London Marathon ran positive splits, as in their second half of the marathon was longer than their first half, which shows that ultimately, in terms of your outright optimal pace, you've not got your pacing right. So if you want to find out a bit more about that, you can check that blog link out. I'll put that in the show notes. But there is that time, and particularly when you've done a load of races or you've had a load in the bag recently, you'll have gone out too hard a couple of times. Most of us, maybe I'm just talking for guys here, we learn pacing through getting it wrong. You overcook it, you go out too hard. You have that magical moment when you start doing these sports and you think, my God, well, I know I'm on for a 4-hour marathon or whatever, but you start out, you feel great, you're like 3K in, you're like, I think I'm going to do this in 3:20. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And somewhere around about mile 12, you get taught a pretty rude lesson that suddenly you haven't bent the space-time continuum and you didn't magically get 50% fitter in the last 24 hours. Whereas Erica, I think one of the most impressive things I saw in your race was that you didn't have that hard experience to base that pacing on over that distance. And yet, looking at your splits, you executed negative splits on the bike and the run. You stayed strong right the way through.
Yeah, because as I said, I was not listening to my body or not listening to my mind. I would just stick on the plan. Man, it was the only way how to do it.
That's
because
hard,
I said, it's just...
But did it feel, was it hard slowing yourself down? Like at the beginning of the bike when everyone's excited?
Was.
And the start of the bike's downhill after that little
definitely was, because I saw few people having problems, and I said, damn it, if I have any problem, I don't have any extra time that I consider.
Well, the idea, I'll put some extra time in the bank now.
Yeah, exactly.
Can't be done.
I was so struggling that was so tough, because I was just like, if I get extra a little bit more speed, then I know if something happens. You never know. With the bikes, you never know, It's just like swimming and running, more or less. That is going to be all right. But the bike, there are extra things that can happen. Maybe someone just knock you down, or you just something on the floor, on the pavement, and you just fall down, or whatever happens, or maybe it's windy, or you don't know. So there are so many extra elements that you can't control.
I think a big part of the pre-race prep for us was, it's a bit of a cliche, but it was controlling the controllables. We could do everything we could not to get ill, because that's going to take or injured. They're going to take the biggest chunks out of your any training you're doing. We could do everything to make sure that we minimise the risk that you're suddenly going to lose a spoke or snap a chain or something like that on the bike. So fresh inner tubes, bikes were serviced, new chains where they needed. There was nothing left to chance on that happening. Nutrition, clearly we're reasonably covered on that one. So we had the nutrition in place, we had the sleep in place, we had the course recce in place. Just what we didn't have was the hard race miles, and then there was also going to be the unknowns, because you can't prepare for those. You never know what's going to happen, which possibly is a time to come to Ironman Wales, James, which is where, again, numbers, figures, stats, you've put in another good block. You're right in the pocket again. You're back to where you wanted to be after the upset of the Outlaw. Tell us a little bit about the run-in and how that one then panned out.
Yeah, so as I say, I was delighted to have Wales pretty close. This was my chance to redeem the no-show that was Outlaw, and I was pleased with how I managed to get my head back into training after Outlaw. But what was quite difficult was no, it took. Well, I mean, I was able to ride about. It was probably 2.5 weeks from when I picked it up to when I was able to ride again. But I mean, even now, like if I rested on hard surface, I can still feel it. 9 months later, it doesn't hurt, but I can tell there's something wrong with that elbow. Yeah. So what was hard after Outlaw was having not raced, but still knowing that I needed a bit of time off, because I'd put together a really good chunk of training and I'd had a bit of a taper. I was ready to put in a really big day at Outlaw, but I was also, I was mentally and physically, I was still fatigued. I still needed that week, 10 days off afterwards. So it was odd it was quite hard forcing myself to have a bit of time off when I hadn't done a race. It was a bit like revising really hard for an exam, but not doing the exam, and then having to chill out and not study your books for a while, even though you haven't done the test. But I did that, and it was fortunate that it coincided with a camping trip down in Devon. So I had a nice bit of chill, and then had 4.5 weeks to ramp it up again and get to Wales. And yeah, again, training went really well, and it was really good and consistent. Just had 4 really solid weeks, and got to Wales in pretty good shape. Certainly, Wales is quite different to Outlaw. It's a sea swim. It's a very hilly bike. I think it's just under 3,000 meters of climbing over the 112 miles, but they're gnarly hills. They're probably no longer than 3 minutes, but they're boom. There's a lot of spikes, which is over 100 miles is a lot more fatiguing than sort of long gradual climbs. And the run is flipping nuts as well. It's just constantly up and down. But so got to race day. Had Kerry, had the family down there, was really excited to nail it, and I have to say, I mean, yeah, it's good, that tracker, isn't it? I mean, that's like they've absolutely nailed that. But so standing on Tenby Beach, and they're playing the Welsh national anthem. I mean, it's proper goosebumps. It's the best start line I've ever stood on. The beach is sort of. There's a big escarpment back from the beach, which all the spectators stand on, and they're sort of looking down on the athletes. There's 3,000 odd people down on the beach. It's electric. It's so cool. The gun goes, and the swim was fantastic. Thankfully, saw no jellyfish, because I might have helped me swim a bit faster, but no jellyfish encounters. And a bit like it sounds like your transition. It's a solid 1K transition. Well, it's a 1K run from the beach to try and to your bike to T1. Got that done, got on the bike, and it was just flying, just having a really good day. And I've made the pacing mistakes before that you were talking about, gone off weight, it felt great, and decided that you suddenly found 30 watts overnight, so and you go and ruin it and you'll pay for it, 4 hours later. But I was controlled, and I was confident enough to let people ride off ahead of me. And because I'm not a great swimmer, I think the swim was 59 minutes. There's quite a lot of people who come out around the hour mark. So there's a lot of people on the road, and I was just aware of making sure I'm not drafting and make sure I don't collide with anyone. And yeah, being a 2-lap course, there's support all the way. It was just one of those days when it was going really well. The power was coming nicely. My goal power was to average about 265 watts, and it was coming easily, and it was just brilliant. And got to I think it was mile 95, 96, and as I say, it was 2 loops. So on the second loop, you start overtaking the guys who are at the back of the field, which is kind of fun. You give them a shout, give them a bit of encouragement, and it's part of what I love about triathlon is that there's all shapes, all sizes, all ages, and it's wicked seeing people out there doing it. But unfortunately, about mile 95, I'd just gone past an aid station. I'd grabbed the bottle and put the bottle in my cage, and just within a split second, I was down on the ground. And someone from memory serves, they were trying to peel a banana, which they'd obviously picked up from the aid station, and had swerved right across the road, taken my front wheel out, and there was, we were probably doing, I would have been doing 24 miles an hour or so, and there was just, not a hope of avoiding everything, and I'd hit the deck.
And
yeah.
And at that point, literally, almost fabled banana skin moment, albeit even worse, knocking your banana skin causing the issue. You've been taken out, you've hit the deck, adrenaline's running hard and the confusion. Jump back on the bike and go, sit there and find the bits. What was your reaction at that point? Because pretty much autopilot takes over.
Yeah, it does. I mean, we were in a village, so there were a lot of people around. There were a lot of spectators. There were volunteers and things around. And my initial reaction was, you do a body check. Have I broken anything? Is there anything really bad here? And I didn't feel it. I mean, there was some nice grazes, but there was nothing really painful in that moment. But I remember feeling a bit of pain in my neck, and I said this to a volunteer who came over, and of course they were immediately like, right, stop, just stay here. Don't, there's some paramedics just around the corner, so we'll get them to come around. And they came around, and, I was sitting on a chair, and they did all the tests and things, and my knee was bleeding quite badly, and elbow and shoulder and things. So they asked if I wanted to carry on, and I decided I wanted to carry on, at least to finish the bike, because I knew that if I didn't, I'd have to wait for hours for someone to cart me back, and I knew that I hadn't broken anything at this point, and my neck was, was just a bit sore, I think, from being, on the TT bike for 4.5 hours or so. So they patched me up, and there were dozens of people riding past this point, and I think I was just on autopilot, like you say. There wasn't a lot of cognizant decision making. I knew I didn't want to stop, but I was quite resigned, I think. So it was a case of just saying, get to the next point, get to the next whatever it was. And it was fortunate that it was a long way into the bike, actually, and I only had 15 miles or so to roll home. Had it happened at mile 30, I don't know I would have carried on. I'd like to think I would have done, but I don't know. So I rolled into T2 and jumped off my bike and got into my run shoes, and yeah, it was within 10, the first step I took, my knee was really pretty painful, and at that point I knew I wasn't going to be able to do the 26 miles. But equally, I knew that my support guys were on the furthest most point of the course, so it's a four loops of 6 miles ish. So I knew they were 3 miles away anyway. So I was like, well, I'll try and get to them. Let's at least get a couple of miles in. Maybe it's just that I'm stiff, or maybe it will loosen up. And And it wasn't, unfortunately. I probably did 3 miles. I sort of ran past them and started heading back into town, and it was just too painful. Yeah, so I just pulled off and sat in the grass, and I knew that Kerry and the team were walking towards me. I knew their plan was to walk back into Tenby, so I knew they'd eventually appear. But I just sat in the grass and had a couple of minutes to myself, had a little sob, and yeah, that was that.
Well, I think your one of your messages after that said triathlon 2019 can do one. I think I probably still have that on my phone somewhere. But yeah, just from there to, I mean, that's unfeasible bad luck twice. Good news is though, if we take the idea that every adversity contains the seed of an equal or better opportunity, what are the chances of that happening again? You're due about 5 good races on the bounce right now. Couldn't be a better time for you to be getting back into it. But that's easy to say now with all the benefit of hindsight. Just quickly, how did you get yourself back to the point from that disappointment to where you could look ahead to another season and feeling good about training and racing again?
Well, actually, it took about 15 hours. The very next morning, entries open for Ironman Wales 2020, and I put my name on the list. Partly because I knew they'd sell very quickly because it's the 10th anniversary of the race, and partly just it's more the atmosphere of the race. I knew that I wanted to go and soak that up, and the run particularly, you're right in the town, and it's a phenomenal race. So I think even in that moment, I knew I wanted to come back and at least finish the thing. Whether 2020 was going to turn into sort of racing again, and I hadn't decided that I was going to, train hard over the winter and really put my all into it again, like I had in 2019. But I knew that I didn't want to end on that note. I think that was definitely it. And then once I'd entered Wales, I sort of took a step back and had a good 3 weeks of doing nothing, and it was hard because even before this, the 2018, my dad passed away, really sadly. But that, and it sounds rather crass to say, it disrupted my triathlon. My triathlon is absolutely insignificant compared to a lot of my life. But I decided I didn't want to race when he was unwell. And that was fine by me to do that. But that year didn't go to plan. The year before that, I had whooping cough. The year before that, I had an operation on my spine in the middle of summer. So I mean, there's been a few years when it just hasn't gone to plan. And yeah, certainly last October, last November after Wales, I just sort of thought I put a lot into sport, and it's because I enjoy it. But I wasn't getting it wasn't sort of a mutual relationship. I was putting in more than I was getting back. So it took a lot of thought, but eventually I decided that, I can't end on this note. I have to, I said, I'll give myself one more year, try and nail a couple of races that I'm proud of and that I feel I've, sort of reached some potential. And yeah, that was it. So I've absolutely smashed the credit card and I'm now very poor because of this year's races.
And they're all in place and ready to go. I think it's a good turnaround to have done. I mean, just 2 instances like that is difficult. I think the way you dealt with them has been, really interesting and very smart. And set yourself up for a big season this year. I mean, certainly in terms of race day from my side, all of the background work paid off. The uncontrollables, i.e. the person swerving with the banana and things like that, well, none of those happened. All of the course prep, the extra work on the bike, the extra work on the swim was just a godsend. I really, really loved the swim. Transitions went smoothly. Swim pace was on target. Bike pace was on target. The course was quite helpful in a way. It had quite a lot. It had quite a lot of uphill, but that came with quite a lot of downhill. And having formerly raced motorbikes, going back some years now, downhill is not an area on a bicycle I have any issue at all. and I'm able to. That's the only place you're ever going to see me close to a Strava segment is if it's downhill, because when it actually requires the work and gravity is not doing it, it's a different place. But all of that worked out well for me. I couldn't believe actually how great I felt on the bike. And I also had to pinch myself a little bit along the way, because 33 Fuel is a much bigger and more established company now, but it began as an idea Erica and I had at the kitchen table, and that goes back a number of years. But to have had, we had the elite shakes overnight before the race. We had them for breakfast. I had them waiting for us afterwards. The Better Fuel, that was an absolute revelation. Using that in training, liquid carbs and having that was not something I'd done before, because we hated all the things that were out there. But to be kind of fueled by stuff that you make, it's a little pinch yourself moment when you go along and you're like, hang on a minute.
Yeah, I think it's awesome, because you know that you're producing a really good product, all natural and stuff. But when you are taking it, you say, "Oh, I made this. That's really cool."
And when it's really smashing it in a race,
this tastes so good. It makes me feel strong. So it's really, you feel really rewarded in a way, in a stupid way, because you are thinking about your race in reality. But in a stupid way, when you're sipping away things or eating things like the bars, the energy bars that we have just brought out. It's exciting.
I know, it was brilliant having all that stuff, and that all went to plan, and I nearly made the classic pacing mistake, because I came onto the run feeling awesome. I'm running, I just felt great, and I wasn't looking at the pace. I looked down, and my aim was to be running 5-minute kilometers during the run, and I was running like 4:10 or something, which I'd been doing in training, because if I'm only going to train a bit, I'll train on the speed rather than so that the race pace was a bit easier, because I was doing very limited miles. I thought 5 minutes to climb, and I backed myself back down. It felt so slow, and I'm so glad I did, because the last 5 kilometers hanging on to that pace was very, very distressingly painful. But I was able to cross the line, nothing in the tank. If the race had been 50 meters longer, I'm not sure I would have finished it. And I spent a good portion of time after that simply laid on the grass just round the back of the start-finish, sort of pouring water over my head and doing nothing else. It was beautiful, but the uncontrollables you can't control. The stuff we could control are controlled, and I was very fortunate that I really was able to have the race that I wanted, and I don't think I could have had a better possible outcome than that, which was nice. If it only had to be a one hit. How about for you, Erica, with the race and the execution? We got the pacing, because there were some surprises in your race.
Well, I feel I was the winner, just because I raced the most of the distance of everyone else. So just because my run didn't went as it's supposed to be, as I end up to run at 2.5 kilometers extra. There is not a lot of distance. But in 70.3, it's a lot of difference.
It's an extra, like 12% on your run.
Yeah, exactly.
10%,
It's quite a lot, and especially when it's happening halfway through. It's not the beginning, it's not the end, it's in the middle. So basically, Marshall, they gave me a wrong direction. They told me here there is the round. It was basically a loop.
Well, the run was an out and back, and didn't they tell you were at the turnaround point?
Yeah, I was at turnaround, and I wasn't. And I said something is wrong, because I was looking, of course, my watch and see the distance. I said, it can't be the turnaround. And so I realized that when I was already doing like maybe 1 kilometer and something, so I had to go back another kilometer and something. So at the end, I did 2.5 kilometers.
But that must
I'm very happy I did.
That is hard.
Yeah, when you know, you realise that's happened, but you're now on your way back to the finish.
Yeah,
the temptation to go, well,
yeah.
Do you carry on? But you know deep down, if you're really going to do this, you've got to suck it up, and that kilometre and a bit that you've run out, you've now got to run back. And then continue, and you're going to come back past that point again.
I know, that was the problem, because I said, if I don't go back and check, I end up to look like I didn't finish. No way, after all this, this is my bullet, it's my race of the year. So I cannot do it, this is the longest. So definitely I need to make this happen. So I just said, okay, I just decided just keep going. And when I found the real turnaround and everything, I got really annoyed. It's so strange. I was not annoyed before because I was not sure. So it was I said, oh, well, I'm maybe doing also this extra K. Instead, maybe, but I realized that there was something wrong. So I'm happy I did it. I'm annoyed about it because, of course, I could do the run faster, arriving first, a little bit before. But, as James, you were saying, when things they don't go in plan, you can't really do so much about it. But in any case, I would imagine that all the training you did to get that race is still in you. So even if that 2 races they didn't went as you planned it, man, you are way more fitter than before the races. So in reality, the race is. I see the race like a party time where we celebrate all the suffering, and it's supposed to be like that,
Yeah.
It's supposed to be a celebration moment where everyone they can express their effort that they did during the training. So yeah, but in any case, even if one race it doesn't go as planned, realistically we have others. I didn't, but.
But how did you, after it was done, there were some demons Eric had, what if I don't do it? What if and I think in a way there can also be a bit of pressure because, we run a sports nutrition company. We work with a lot of triathletes. We work with a lot of cyclists. We work with a lot of runners. We have a position in that space. And it's not like everyone is watching or anything like that, but if you feel like, well, what if I didn't make it?
But you watched, no? I think you watched.
Yeah.
You did.
Yeah. But I know what you're saying, sort of people will expect you to have it absolutely nailed. For some reason, some people will think that to be an authority on sports nutrition, as you guys are, that maybe you need to be performing at the highest level. I mean, it's obviously not true, but it's the same as coaches. People who coach triathlon aren't necessarily the best triathletes. It doesn't.
Yeah, but there is a lot of pressure on that, and also in your mind, you also put yourself a lot of that pressure because you just say not just tell other people what they expect, also what you expect from yourself, because you see and you meet all these amazing athletes and. There is a synergy between everyone, and you just say, well, I just wanted to be part of also the other side, and not just one part of it, but just make the most of I can do also on sports.
And how did you feel when you got that medal over the finish line?
Oh my God, that was so good. That's the best. Actually, we had a very funny medal. We had 4 medals in 2, so 2 each, because
Ironman Whistler screwed up the medals. So
I heard about this.
Yeah, so what they did, the medals for the 70.3, I don't know if they did it for the full distance as well. They had the correct distances in miles were written on the medals for each leg, but they were then annotated with kilometres. So it looked like it was totally wrong. And then they...
So it's like a shorter bit.
People made such a hoo-ha about this online, because Ironman events are not cheap. And, the upside of that is they're very well organised and very well put together. The tracking app is really good, for example. And all sorts of other stuff is great. You've paid for it and you get a good service. But... So people got a bit annoyed that the medals were screwed up. But then, so we got sent... We didn't even know they were coming. Replacement medals that are correct. And they don't feel right. Because it's not the one that you got given over the start-finish line. It's like you just bought it in a shop or something. It's a pointless medal because it's like, that's not the one I got.
Funny. Yeah.
You've just been given this other medal. It was unusual, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was very unusual. And then arrives Warren's one, not mine. I said, hold on 1 second. Why not to me? And then
Yours turned up the next day.
The next day arrived also mine. But it was so weird again, they don't even arrive at the same time that you have to say, it's just like, it was so weird. It's just, it's not the medal of the adventure. But you might have a lot of medals. You might have a big collection. How many races have you done?
I do. So this year I've got 2 half Ironman distance, 2 full Ironman races, and 1 sprint. So I've got 5 on the cards for this year. Yeah.
Nice. Well, that'll add to the medal count. So just to wrap this one up, I'm going to be hard on everybody here. I want all of us to pick one thing, a lesson, a point, something that they learned from their 2019 season in triathlon. And to give you guys a little bit of thinking time, I'll go first. And I'll say that for me, the thing I learned was experience is hugely beneficial. And I was able to use the experience I had in long distance events to really help focus my training on the stuff, and hopefully with Eric as well, on the stuff we could control versus the stuff we couldn't. Really sweating all of the details that were everything that wasn't about the actual race. Okay, we had a fixed set of training hours, but what could we do about nutrition, sleep, not getting injured, staying supple, foam rollering, yoga, checking out the course? It was using that experience to sweat the details and create a race plan, and then try and execute that race plan with the caveat that, as Mike Tyson's coach, Cus D'Amato, said, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. Mike Tyson's credited with that quote, but he got it from his coach. And, that point is, you take your plan out into the world, it may get altered. But it was all of that sweating those little things made the difference. The race execution, I could control. What happened, I couldn't. I was very fortunate. There was nothing unexpected, and I really got the race I wanted. It could have gone the other way, but I couldn't have done more in the lead up to it. So probably that was the one for me. What do you think, Erica, was the one thing for you?
I can tell you. Totally. Easy. Because I never did that distance. I never, had to go to another level of pain. It's just like all about pain. Mine is like, I can go faster, but there is always a little bit of extra pain on going faster that you just realize, actually, there was no pain. Next level it is. So I do remember, because when we were in Vancouver, this was the last 2 months before the race, 1.5 or something like that, we had a treadmill. So I could push the treadmill actually while I was not watching Warren. It was just adding extra, just until you basically your legs, they just the maximum you can do it. And it's amazing how fast that kind of muscle memory, it comes back, because that session I do extra, I don't know, maybe it was 2% extra. That it doesn't sound a lot, but it can be a lot. It depends which speed you're doing it. But let's say like from 2 to 10% extra adding. Then I noticed that maybe 2 days later I do the same session, but I do longer with that intensity. And I notice, I'm in pain, but not as much as the first shocking. So shock your body, shock your mind, because you can do more. And that actually is something that helped me a lot also with Sufferfest. Not going back to Sufferfest, my man, it's amazing. You're just thinking, I never really sweat as much as I with Sufferfest. So I realized that actually, there is always still, when they say no pain, no gain, is absolutely right, because realistically there is always an extra step, something extra you can give to make it even stronger or faster.
So for you it was like that sort of peeling back, finding those extra layers of speed that you did, and discomfort that you didn't know
Discomfort.
you had because you hadn't been there before.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then that starts to become more
Yeah,
normal. So
absolutely
sort of
discomfort.
getting a few more gears.
Yeah, with more gears, a discomfort that you know that actually there is more in you. And, it's the easy things to think, but when you're really doing the best that you can do, you think, I don't have extra. I don't. But instead, you still have something a little bit extra, you still have it. And that is something that it's great to find inside you when you find that little extra that at the end of the season is actually exponential. It can go exponential if you keep pushing yourself with this little extra.
All right, so we've got me sweating details, Erica finding extra gears. What about you, James? What was the one takeaway for you from last season to wrap us up?
Mine, it's a terrible cliche, but it really is about enjoying the process and enjoying the journey. So, last year my triathlon life was all just the journey. There weren't the races, and I'm absolutely guilty of looking at training as sort of the bit you have to suffer through to enjoy your race and in order to do well in your race. And I put pressure on myself to do that. But if uncontrollables happen, as they did to me last year, and you end up only with the training side of things, which still amounted to 14, 15 hours a week for 40 odd weeks of the year, God knows how many hours that is. If you don't enjoy that, really, what's the point? And even that's sort of on a macro scale, but even on a micro scale, sort of, I used to be so guilty. I used to now thrash myself over the back if I didn't complete a training session to the standard that I'd expected of myself. And it's really daft because it's still at the end of the day a hobby, however competitive you might like to be or not. It's sort of, we do it for fun, and if you don't enjoy individual sessions, and of course you're not going to enjoy every individual session, you're only going to get good if you sort of push yourself when you don't want to do it. That's certainly a quality in itself, but enjoying the overall picture has to be, it's absolutely the lesson I learned from last year. If you enjoy the journey, which comprises 99% of the time, yes, it's gutting if a race doesn't go to plan or doesn't happen, but you've enjoyed it. You've enjoyed everything that's come before.
Yeah,
I think that's a brilliant place to put this one to bed. And just I hope everyone's enjoyed that and can maybe relate to some of their own race experiences out there, and hopefully some of our ramblings will have been helpful as well for people putting their seasons together this year and beyond. But guys, great to have us all together on this one.
Yeah,
high fives all round to everybody.
High five team.
Great work. And onwards and upwards to the next one.
Here's 2020.
So there you have it, folks. 3 Ironman triathlon seasons, 3 very different results, but ultimately 3 very happy athletes. There were some roller coasters in there, were there not? I still, even when I knew about it at the time, but just summarising it there, wow, James had some serious bumps in the road to deal with. Erica and I may have been stretched thin trying to squeeze our training in and max out our bang for buck everywhere. Being taken out at mile 95 on the bike, that's literally got to hurt. I just love the way he's been able to bounce back from that and to use that as something making him stronger, not weaker. But I'd expect no less. He works for 33 Fuel. We are made of stern stuff here. So I hope you enjoyed that one. Let us know, what are your racing plans for this year? How have your training seasons and years gone? How's your race execution been? Do those lessons resonate with you? What would be your biggest takeaways that you've had from your race seasons in the past? Let us know. This is the kind of stuff we love to know. It's the kind of stuff we love to share. Because frankly, the more minds we can get involved in this, the bigger we can grow this athletic mastermind, the more we can share it, the faster, the quicker, the better, the stronger, the healthier we can all become. Which of course neatly leads me to the fact that if you are looking for the finest high-performance natural sports nutrition anywhere on this planet, then of course there's only one destination. Get yourself over to 33fuel.com, get shopping, and we'll ship it out to you right away. Free UK delivery on all orders. That's just as standard. So look folks, thanks for joining us. Have yourselves a great week and weekend. Look forward to catching up with you on the next show.